Welcome everyone to Real Estate with Gwen Price. And I'm so happy to have as my guest today, Amy Best. Hi, Amy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gwen?
Good. And Amy is a lawyer with Best Law Offices here in Sudbury and in Espanola, right?
Yeah, my main office is in Sudbury, downtown, and I also have a branch office out in Espanola, and it's open all the time. I've got 2 staff members there,
Well,
and I go there once or twice a week as needed.
yeah, well, and so you would actually, the Manitoulin Island and that, I guess people from all that whole area there would probably use your office, eh?
Yeah, we do some Manitoulin, a lot of Massey, Webwood, out that way.
Well,
And yeah, there's quite a bit of buying and selling in Espanola.
yeah.
I guess because of the mill, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've had people that have worked at that mill. So yeah, it's good to know that they don't have to come all the way into town to get some legal advice. So, so we had chatted before, and one of the things my clients always wonder what goes on, and you know, we get a deal together, we get an offer accepted on a house. And then what happens, you know, who picks up after that? And that's why I try to get them to already know who their lawyer is going to be, so that we can send all the documents to their lawyer. And as a buyer and as a seller, there's little different things that are going on from your perspective, right? When somebody's selling, it isn't quite, I guess, all the searches that go on as when somebody is buying.
Right. Yeah, there's always a lot more to do when you're buying, because as the buyer, you have to do your own due diligence, and your lawyer does that too. So if you're buying, once the deal is firmed up with you, then the real estate agent will forward the fully signed contract to the lawyer's office, and we would review it and note the most important dates. Obviously, the closing date is very important. And the other very important date is called the requisition date, or the title search date. So that's the date before closing where we search the title, we check for mortgages, liens. We often in Sudbury, we would do a search with the city to check for open building permits or work orders against the property.
Right.
And yeah, and we also do all the work for your bank, because many buyers are borrowing money from a bank. So we get mortgage instructions, so documents from your bank to do a lot of those same things, and to make sure that the bank's mortgage that is going to be registered on the closing day is going to be a valid and first position lien against the property. Right. So that's kind of the rundown of what we would do for you as a buyer. Yeah. We also, prior to your closing date, we would contact the utility providers at the property, and we contact them, but we can't actually set up your new accounts for you. So that's a really common question. So I always say, I'm notifying them, but you have to call them and get your account set up, because you know, if you're a first-time buyer, depending on the utility, they might want a deposit or credit card info. So yeah, as long as you do that a few days before the closing, then that's pretty good. And what else? Yeah, we deal with adjustments for property taxes, because when you're buying, you're going to start paying the property taxes as of the closing day. Well, and sometimes the seller, go ahead, Gwen.
No, I was going to say that's the typical adjustment is the property tax, right? If the seller's paid beyond the day of closing.
Exactly. Often the seller has, just based on paying the bills as they come out. So we would figure out the adjustment and build that into the numbers on closing.
So, and what other type of adjustments, like oil tanks always come up about filling or all of that as an adjustment. What happened, the tank has to be filled.
Yeah, oil tanks, propane tanks, if propane is a heating source. Yeah. A lot of those propane tanks are on rentals as well. So we adjust for that. Unless the buyer and the seller agree not to fill up the tanks, then it's kind of the default thing that's done. So the seller would have it filled up, and then you, the buyer, would pay for the full cost of that full tank as an adjustment on closing.
Which can
So
be significant amount of money sometimes that nobody remembers.
yeah, that could be a $1,200 extra that you didn't plan for.
Well, especially first-time buyers, right? Because they're struggling to get their 5% together to put as the down payment, and then there's a few other surprises along the way. Like it could be tax and it could be oil, just depending on the property, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. First time buyer. Well, there's a credit program for land transfer tax that most first time buyers are aware of from their real estate agent or their own research, but you got to be careful that you meet all the qualifying factors, because sometimes that can be a nasty surprise if you find out you don't qualify and you have to pay
Yeah.
that land transfer tax.
Yeah, and land transfer tax is on every property sold in the province, and in fact in Toronto, I believe they have their own. In addition to the provincial one, they also have a municipal one, I believe. So it's a significant. It can be a significant amount of money, and it's based on the purchase price. So the higher the purchase price, the more money you're going to be paying out in a land transfer tax. So
You got it. Yeah, it's on every sale, and whether it's vacant land, a house, an apartment, it's on everything, and it's based on the purchase price. Yeah, and it's paid on closing, so you have to have the money in place to bring to your lawyer along with the other closing costs to cover it off.
So that's on what you call a statement of adjustments that itemizes everything, because you're going to ask the buyer to bring in X number of dollars based on all of the things that have been adjusted for and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it actually doesn't go on the statement of adjustments, because that would only show, say the purchase price was $250, the statement of adjustments would show $250 plus or minus the deposit that you already paid, plus any adjustments for fuel, other little stuff. But no, the land transfer tax, we put it on the client's bill and just let them know to bring it in. But yeah, it is collected on prior to closing.
So do you ever start working on a deal before it's firm, or you pretty well wait till all the conditions have been removed before you really start working on that transaction?
Yeah, I wouldn't start really working on it until it's firm, because once I work on it, I've spent $35 off the hop to search the title. And yeah, so we usually wait until we get the waivers, unless it's a quick closing and I know that I'm going to be tight for my title searches and my other searches, then I would call the client and say, can I do these searches now? And you understand that if it doesn't go ahead, then you'll reimburse those searches. But most of the time, there's enough time in between.
And how long does it take to do the typical searches for a property with the city?
Yeah, these days, I guess it depends on their volume, but they're pretty good. If I ordered one on a Monday and I needed it back really quick, I might get it back by the end of the week. It depends. So we order them as soon as we can, and we ask them, we put on the form what day we need it back by, and they're quite good at getting them back in time for our dates. But the more on the form itself, it says minimum 28 business days required or something like that.
And you never get 28 days.
Oh, no, never. And we used to be able to deliver these checks and papers to the city, but now you actually have to mail them because of the pandemic. So that's actually slowed things down. So I take back my Monday to Friday turnaround time. Hopefully they'll let us deliver them again soon.
Like a lot of things have changed because of the COVID. I mean, as a realtor, but certainly as you meeting with clients, do you meet in person with your clients now, or is it done, like this, or?
Now, mid-June, now I'm meeting with clients again most of the time. If the clients are comfortable to come in, then I would prefer to meet in person, just because so much is lost, especially on a purchase. There's a lot lost when I meet over Zoom, because I can't slide the map or the title search across the table and show you this. And And so I did do that for a while through the earliest and most
Yeah.
uncertain times,
Right.
and it went okay. And we kind of, it was a learning curve.
Yep.
And
Like,
but I am happy to be meeting people in person again in our boardroom, and we sit as far apart as we can, and it's sanitized in between clients and all that protocols. So yeah, that's changed. I used to meet clients right here at my desk, and now we only meet people up at the front.
okay.
And we're 5 lawyers sharing that room, so
Yeah.
there's not too much fighting over it. Just book ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else has changed with that? Just, I don't know, things have generally, the banks were really on restricted hours and still are, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, my bank is still open downtown because we rely heavily on deposits and certified checks and stuff like that.
Yep.
There's obviously room to get more tech savvy there, but
Well,
it seems to be still working.
yeah, I've always wondered, like, there are still checks, right? And it's still not totally e-transfer between, real estate offices, lawyers' offices, and all that kind of thing. I don't know.
No, there's more and more of that happening. But for when I get mortgage funds in from the Royal Bank or whatever lender, they usually come by direct deposit or by wire transfer into my trust account.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes still though, depending on the lender, we pick up a draft at the local branch. And so yeah, every bank's a bit different and every law office is a bit different, but there's definitely a trend towards adopting and embracing, wiring. And you could set up a desktop wiring from your office instead of doing it at the bank. So
yeah, the world is changing rapidly, and I think partly with all of the COVID, we've certainly embraced technology, and we're all doing these Zoom calls and meetings and things like that. So I think people are a little bit more comfortable, doing things electronically, but there's positive negatives.
There's lots of good coming out of it, but we have, as the lawyers, and you do too, you have to know your client and meet your client and obtain ID. So if my client is sending their ID ahead of time by email, I still need to see the original ID. And if I'm doing that over Zoom, well, they have to hold it up to me and I have to say, okay, yeah, that's the same one you sent me, and all that kind of stuff. So we have to be careful not to get too comfortable with all our technology, because there's still lots of privacy and fraud concerns to be aware of.
Right. We've talked to that before too. It's not that it doesn't happen here in Sudbury, but it certainly isn't as common as maybe some other parts of the world. But because of that, we all have to be more cautious about what's going on and who we're meeting, and where's their money coming from and all that kind of thing. So
exactly. Oh, and I guess for a seller, if you were telling your seller client, hey, why do I need a lawyer? If you have a mortgage, then your lawyer is going to contact your bank and correspond directly with your bank to pay out your mortgage to the penny of what you owe on the closing date. And a tip for your sellers is, I would have them, if they're worried about what it might be, check into the prepayment charges that your bank's going to tack on to what you owe, because some people are getting some shock from those numbers lately.
It's
and sometimes it's negotiable, or sometimes you can beg to have them reduce it a bit. So the more time you have for that, the better.
Well, that's the reason we all, as realtors, right, we're asking our clients, okay, is there a mortgage? Like, when did you last, renew it? Have you still got 5 years left on it? Because that can be significant. And you have to counsel them to call the bank and find out what their payout penalty might be, what's their balance and all that. And it depends what they're doing too. If they're going to buy another house, and the bank will allow them to port that mortgage and all of those different things, right? And
exactly.
With expertise, but I know that there can be some shocking discharge penalties too.
And Yeah, and what you would want to know if you're porting it or getting a new mortgage with the same bank at the same time or soon after, often you have to pay the full fee up front, and then only later, once your new one goes through,
Yeah.
sometimes the bank will give you the money back then, but it's still, at least what I'm seeing, usually you still have to pay it up front. So that's part of what I have to pay out. We pay you, we send you your commission out of the proceeds.
Yeah.
We handle all the funds. So the buyer's lawyer receives all the down payment and the mortgage funds from the buyer, and then the buyer's lawyer and the seller's lawyer exchange all the money on the closing day and do all the registrations and this and that.
How do you have any keys, turning over keys nowadays? Has that become an issue because of the contact, or is that sort of eased up too? Because for a while, I know some people were leaving the key in the lockbox at the house, the realtor's lockbox, and the client would get the key out of there. But now it's just everything
Yeah,
gone.
that doesn't change so much for what comes through here. We usually ask the seller client when they come to sign to bring one key with them that I can give on closing to the buyer's lawyer.
Okay.
But they often leave a bunch of keys in the house, or sometimes there's still one in the lockbox too. So that hasn't really changed.
Okay.
Well, more and more people don't have keys. They just give me the lock code, and I
Right. Yeah.
provide that on closing.
I don't know where my front door key is at all because I haven't used a key in so long, right? And I'm not even sure I know how to reprogram it. So anyway, but
Yeah, some clients say, "Oh, I don't have any keys and I don't lock the door." And well,
yeah,
maybe you should lock the door before closing.
yeah, don't broadcast that to the public, okay? But yeah, it's still surprising to me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think there's I mean, you're always willing to talk to the client, and I always tell my clients that too. From the time I turn it over, you know, to the lawyer's going to get everything, and if in between that time before closing there's questions or whatever, they can call you and ask you, you know, I heard about this, or I'm worried about that, what about this, and you can kind of guide them through, because especially for first-time buyers, the whole process is very daunting and scary and all.
Yeah. And sometimes fast and
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tell your clients not to be shy to reach out, because often we won't reach out to you until we've, you know, opened the file and started working on it.
Yeah.
It's not, so don't be shy to make the first call and
Well,
say,
and sometimes as a realtor, I don't hear about anything until after the fact, right? That something came up in the searches, and it gets worked out. I might not even hear any of those things until, you know, my clients have moved in. Oh, do you know what happened? And, you know,
yeah,
I didn't. Okay, you know.
yeah,
So obviously it got handled between the lawyers, and you know, the agent wasn't brought into it. But there's
yeah,
come up between, you know, and doing all of those searches, right? And there's things they have to think about and that you'll discuss with them, and they can make decisions based on what you're finding too. So
yeah. One thing, because I do that, you know, in Sudbury, I like to do that search with the city to check for building permits. But what that search does not show, obviously, is if there's been major work done without a permit. Obviously, there's going to be no record of that.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's good for I guess for you guys to tell your buyers, especially if they're new or inexperienced. You know, if you have concerns about this work or that renovation, tell the lawyer, kind of flag it to them so that
Yeah.
they can read the search with a critical eye for something that might not have been done with a permit.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky, it can be tricky to navigate that because, well, for various reasons, but it's good to communicate that as far ahead as possible, because one thing that seems to happen a lot is issues pop up the week before the closing day.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to stop a train, and wheels are in motion, and it's super stressful. So
Yeah.
the more, you know, I try when I get a new deal to call the client and chat them through the property and this and that. But if the client can can flag something like that to me ahead of time too, then it just
Yeah.
makes things better, smoother, especially when you have more time to
Yeah.
do your searches and
Yeah.
sort through all that.
Well, I think that's good, great to know, you know, because like I say, a lot of, especially somebody who has, even a seller who hasn't sold in maybe 50, 60 years, they're wondering, you know, what do I do? Who does what? And all of those questions. And then when you're a buyer and it's your first time buying, or maybe you haven't bought in 20, 30 years.
Yeah. And I'm sure things have changed a lot. Like, I don't think those searches were commonly done until maybe 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I started 32 years ago, we all needed to see, you know, what did they call it? A surveyor's certificate or the survey, right? And then that kind of went by the wayside for a long time. So
Yeah.
it changes, technology's changed, all of these things, and you know, but basically everything still gets registered, and you know, what is registered against that property is important. And that's what you help them go through, both.
Yeah. Yeah. I make sure that you as the buyer get good title, good ownership to the property.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like, I can only work with the information I have.
Yeah.
If I don't have a up-to-date surveyor certificate to compare with you, then I can't tell you, nobody can tell you whether that garage is fully on the property. Maybe it's hanging over onto the neighbor's property.
Mhm.
And that's where you get into this insurance product called title insurance. And we could spend a whole day talking about that and how it works. But I guess what I'd say to your clients is just inform yourself what title insurance is, what it's not, how it works, and why it's important. And sometimes title insurance is not the preferred route. Sometimes your buyer might want or need to have a survey done as part of the agreement, or before closing, or soon after. So it's a good discussion to have, because it's too late by the time it's too late to order, to do by the time it's coming close to closing.
Yeah, there's many different types of properties too. Not everything's a house in a subdivision, and you know, a house. A lot of the you know, the older sections of town have got some interesting things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like I've seen carports attached to the neighbors and all of those things. So you know, it's interesting, and things were a little relaxed, I guess, you know, years and years ago. So, but that's, you know, it depends also on what is important to the client. If something's absolutely critical, you know, they need to be educated, and they need to know exactly what's involved with the property that they're buying. So that's
exactly, yes.
The lawyer representing them, both buying and selling, and that's for sure.
Good point. Ask your client, what is this pool, is this garage a major selling point for you? Because we just want to know that to make sure. And it's tricky with building permits, right? Not every garage, depending on how old it is when it was built, should or needs to have a permit. So that's where it gets to be kind of a tricky area to navigate. But the more we can all have communication about that kind of stuff, the earlier the better, then it goes smoother for everyone.
So
it's
true, because everything's like, everybody's got different needs and wants in a property, and what's important to one might not be important to another. And so Amy, if they want to get a hold of you, what's the best number to reach you?
My office in Sudbury, it's 674-9292.
Okay, great.
That's the best way to find me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That's very informative, and I'll post your information too on and link it to my sites and that too. So if anybody's got any questions, they can get a hold of you. Thanks so much.
Good. You're welcome. Thanks, Gwen.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.